Well, good morning, everyone. Representative Lee Kwong, District 21 House Majority Leader. It's hard to believe that we're done with our third week already. I don't know what has happened, but wow, we're really moving through this. And I think we have just getting into where it's really going to get crazy. I was just looking at the bills this morning, and as I'm looking, they're adding bills onto it, and I saw the stack of bills at the front desk. So, and there's still people working on bills. So what the final count's going to be, I really don't know, but it's going to be pretty substantial. Will there be a lot of controversial stuff? I imagine. I see some that looks pretty controversial. We're going to be dealing with a couple things in committee this morning, the resolution for legislative salaries, and then also the non-meandered waters extension of the sunset. So that's a little bit about what we got going today.
Sure. Good morning, Representative Kemp Peterson, District 19 in Salem, House Assistant Majority Leader. Yeah, the activity is certainly picking up as we're finishing the final kind of the early stretch, I call it, or end of the first quarter, and it's gonna the pace will pick up dramatically. Looking at the calendars for committees next week, you're seeing full slates. And that's not going to stop. All of a sudden we're going to be coming up on crossover day, which seems like a long ways away, but it's going to be here before we know it. So we'll continue to work through the process that we do, and hopefully start to get some clarity on a few other things, and continue to hope for the budget numbers as we're going to see those coming here as well. So look forward to your questions this morning.
Yes, they are. Yep, they'll both be on the floor today.
There was a House bill filed earlier this week that would require drug testing of lawmakers. Do you have any thoughts about that proposal?
Well, I saw that. I certainly don't have a problem with that. If that's the will of the body, why I certainly don't have a problem with it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I haven't really looked at it that closely, but, it'll go through the process, and I'm sure it'll be an interesting discussion to see, what, I haven't talked with Representative Goodwin to see what the rationale was as he was putting this together. So as we get further along, it'll be interesting to hear that conversation, in my opinion. So.
People have signed on to the proposal to repeal Marcy's law. Can you talk a little bit about why you respond to that?
You want to go ahead?
Okay. Well, I think there's some big issues with it. It's going to start costing the counties a lot more money, and I'm afraid there's some unintended consequences. I don't know if you saw on the news last night, but they were talking about, this was Augustana College, and they said that if somebody was convicted of sexual contact or anything like that, that was just outside of the college, they couldn't do anything about it, they couldn't announce it, they couldn't say anything. So it's very concerning when you can't let people know that something like that is going on. So I think that is some of the unintended consequences that we're seeing. We're not able to make the information available when it really should be.
Yeah, I would agree with the leader, and some of the feedback we're getting from our local folks. There are some serious questions on how it's working and if it's matching up with the intent of what was originally put into the Constitution.
Are you concerned at all? I was just scrolling through Facebook last night even, and there's already some Marcy's Law advertisements that I'm seeing. It's like 69% of South Dakota support Marcy's Law. It seems like as this bill's been filed, there's already a campaign to keep it in place.
I have not seen any of that stuff, the stats or anything like that. But I know if you talk to the counties, to the state's attorneys, they're having to hire on more people because they have to keep closer track of some of these things. It's costing the counties more money, which they don't have to do it. And I'm afraid it's not doing what everybody thinks it's doing. That's my opinion, is that people didn't totally, it sounds good in theory, what they're doing. But when you can't tell people about a crime that happened right next door to my house, or what happened, That to me is problematic.
Sort of along the same line, there seems to be a response to that in lawmakers' desire to make the threshold higher for constitutional amendments to pass at the ballot, or for out-of-state issues to come up on the ballot. Do you support the resolution to raise that bar for constitutional amendments, and what other changes do you think need to be made?
You guys had that in the Senate
Yeah,
yesterday.
we
didn't
passed
you?
that off the floor of the Senate yesterday by a pretty wide margin, and the argument is that we should leave it up to the people to decide what to do, but yet at the same time, we're putting it on the ballot, so they're gonna get a chance to decide. And of course, there's a little irony in it that particular constitutional amendment only has to pass by 50%, and it's changing it to 55% for anything else going forward, so there's a little bit of irony in that, but it had pretty overwhelming support coming off the floor of the Senate, and I think it came out of that summer study committee with pretty good support too, that was made up of different walks of life and different interests and stuff too.
Yeah, I served on that summer study, and it was bipartisan support coming out of there. So it, what's been mentioned that we've heard many times is, the Constitution's considered more of a sacred document, and much harder to undo changes that are made. And I think that was the intent of Senator Bolin when he brought this summer, was to have the ability to change it, be a little tougher, knowing that it's so difficult if something isn't right.
And I would agree with that as well. I think the Constitution should not be taken lightly, and we should not just change it on a whim. I think there has to be a very, very good reason to change the Constitution.
The speaker has talked about potentially going farther than 55%. Do you think the House would be willing to support that number, or would you like to see something more?
I don't know. This summer we had, Senator Bolin brought two versions this summer, a 60% and a 55%. And after the discussion in the summer task force, we kind of coalesced around the 55%, and that support seemed to be broader than going with the 60%. I guess I haven't heard the speaker's comments regarding that, so I can't speak for him.
Yeah, I've not heard those comments either, but I would certainly support a 60. Whatever the will of the body is, if that's the will where they would like to go, I would certainly be supportive of that.
Perhaps a question first for Senator Hocker, because it's a Senate proposal. Senator Nelson put forth a bill that would ban undocumented students on public college campuses, or would say they can't attend. Do you have any sense of the support for that proposal at this time?
I don't, I didn't even put that forward. I guess I signed on to that, I did see it, but then you see so much of that stuff. Has it been assigned to a committee? I haven't followed it. So it'll have a hearing, and the committee will vote her up or down, and if it comes to the floor, we'll take debate and see where it goes. I don't know what the feel of the caucus is at this moment. We really haven't talked about that one.
Do you have any thoughts about it?
I would like to see the testimony on it, and if the testimony is decent testimony and compelling, I'd probably support it.
Regarding permitless carry, came up again this year. Bill appears to be identical to that passed through the legislature last year, vetoed it last day by the governor. Could you talk about permitless carry and then what your thoughts are, will it make it through the legislature again? What's different?
I have not seen it. I have not looked at it. Is it identical to what it was last year? Is it the same thing? I know there's some other things floating around, constitutional carry, and there's one that's being patterned after Wyoming, and I think there's another one. So, but I have not seen any of those, so I would rather see them before I make any comments on them. I supported them last year. I would assume I would support it this year, but without seeing the bill, it's hard for me to say absolutely.
Who's carrying that bill, do you know?
Senator Lynch, for instance.
Okay, and I haven't read it then, that I know of. But I'm assuming, I'm sure if we got a chance to vote on it last year, I'll probably support it again this year.
And then the follow-up,
know Alan Solano's got a bill similar, doing something too, and I'm not sure what that, it's another pistol permitting thing, and Alan Solano has that one. Have you seen that one? Okay, well, it's probably still floating around out there then.
The follow-up on that is 11.4 drop. Certain felons can apply for a concealed carry. What do you think of the idea of allowing convicted felons to carry a concealed pistol?
I have not read the bill yet, so I need to see what it says. First thought is it's a little concerning to me, but it depends on how it is worded, what it says, you know, all that stuff. You know, sometimes how things are worded, you need to look at that first before you can say absolutely, but at first blush, I would say, I wonder.
I would agree with that too. You know, I haven't looked at that bill in particular, but, you know, I'm sure there's, I don't know if there's a parameter or something they're setting up that has to, or timeframe. You know, I haven't read the bill to be able to give you an honest answer on it, I guess.
Who's the prime on that one? Okay.
Senator Lundstrom and Representative Helgard are bringing Senate Bill 110, which deals with bringing concern about parenthood and some of the descriptors they use prior to performing abortions under some laws and also authorizing additional information that pregnancy hope centers can provide. I was wondering if you've seen that bill, if you would have any initial thoughts about raising those concerns in statute regarding.
I think I've seen the bill. I've seen some of the literature that was associated with it. At the face value, I don't have a problem with it. But I mean, once again, once we start, it's like with everything. You get presented a bill and yeah, it looks good on the surface until you really start taking testimony and delving into it and looking at what the other unintended consequences are. And then make your decision from there.
I haven't seen the bill.
I have not either.
Representative Goodwin also had a bill to allow active duty military to drink at bars or buy alcohol at age 18. Do you guys have any sense of that as in the future in the legislature?
That's a good question. I really don't know. And I know the thought process is, okay, you can send them out to die for your country, but yet if they want to drink alcohol, they're not allowed to do it. So I understand where he's coming from on there. Will it get any traction? Is it a popular idea? I have no idea. We'll just need to see what the testimony is and where it goes.
What do you three believe are the key takeaways of this 4-day legislative week, and what are you looking forward to next week?
Well, final bill deadline's coming up next week, so by then we're gonna have a good sense of everything that's out there. Start combing through and going through the committee process in the Senate anyway. The key takeaways we've dealt, in state affairs anyway, we've dealt a lot with the summer task force for initiated measures and constitutional amendments and things along those lines. And most of them have been passing through. Even Senator Nesba brought a separate bill yesterday that was on his own accord and it passed through the Senate. And so we've really tackled those issues this year, dealing with initiated measures and constitutional amendments. That's probably the key takeaway this week in the Senate.
The House side, you know, we're going to have two fairly significant votes this afternoon with non-meandered water sunset extension and constitutional legislative pay resolution. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, how those turn out. And as we move into next week, as Senator Maher said, you know, we're going to have a better feel for what the next 3 weeks look like, just with the amount of volume of bills we're going to have, and start to kind of get a feel for what this year's legislative identity is. And I don't know if we know that yet, because there's really not a central theme right now, in my opinion, besides the budget. So I think we'll you know, kind of start to get a feel for the will of this legislature.
I would agree with everything that's been said, and you know, right now, we have been dealing with a lot of initiated measure, those type of things in state affairs on our side as well. And to say what the central theme will be, we're going to start talking about the new building for precision ag. I mean, that's going to be a big deal, figuring out how we can finance that, if we can finance that, how creative we can be in figuring that out. That's one thing that I know is on President Peterson and myself on our plate that we really are very much in favor of. And we'll just, over the coming weeks, that will be a focal point.
You've seen the legislation that's circulating out there. Do you have any hopes for what that central theme might become, or what you hope it's not?
Well, I would like to hope that it's gonna be common sense, and common sense solutions for South Dakota, whether it be budgetarily or just policy decisions. I think we've got to keep the future in mind, but also make common sense solutions for things that are affecting us right now, so.
Something else, the Senate, we've seen our first bill draft of the other proposal for non-meander water this week, and that's just been held internally in the caucus. But I'm sure that'll be released here this next week with the bill deadline filing coming up. And there'll be quite a bit of discussion on that in the Senate. Senate Bill 24 was passed out of committee, and it's being held on the Senate floor until this other bill can catch up with it. And then at that time, that bill should come out of committee, we'll have a policy discussion on the floor of the Senate with both those bills.
What are your caucuses telling you are important? What are the topics that members of your party want to be talking about, want to get out to the public, and want us to know more?
I don't know that there's anything specific, that our caucuses have really coalesced around as the focus for this session yet. I mean, everybody's been so busy going out there and getting their bills, the signatures, getting everything drafted. As we come into this next week now, then we're going to be able to see more what's going on and a bigger focus. A lot of the focus has been the initiated measure process for right now, making things better, understanding it, and that's what, coming out of the summer studies, that's what a lot of the focus has been, getting that done.
In the Senate, I would say it's been non-meandered waters. We've spent quite a bit of time talking about that. Once again, there's a group in our caucus that wants to see another bill. There's some other ideas put forward. They were speaking to their whip groups this week about that, making their cases, and starting that discussion.
There's the proposal in the Senate to raise the threshold for constitutional amendments. There's one in the House dealing with legislative pay. Assuming both of those pass, how might that be perceived by the voters, do you think?
It's going to be up to them to decide. I don't know. This year's on the ballot is going to be really interesting, because it looks as of right now there's going to be quite a few initiated measures and constitutional amendments out there. And the Secretary of State said yesterday that right now it looks like it's going to be a 2-page ballot for the first time in state history.
What do you think the perception will be? You asked us.
I just mentioned.
You did? Well, it sounds like you should ask some of the constituents what they think. All we're doing is giving the public an opportunity to vote and see if it's an issue that's important to them. And I think the public has shown us that they make wise decisions when presented with choices, and I assume they'll do the same thing with the opportunity to raise the threshold for changing the Constitution by ballot. There are certainly a myriad of opinions on this matter. Some think that what passed in the Senate, the 55% threshold to pass, is too low. Some think it's too high, and some think it's right on. So I think that question will be asked and answered at the ballot, and until then, unless you have polling data, I can't give you any better feel than that. I don't think there's anything wrong with putting the proposal in front of the public to have them decide.
In the conversations that we've had with our caucus about the Constitution for a salary increase, I don't know where it's going to go today. I really don't. There's a certain group that says, no way, no how, we're not going to do anything, and others say, well, let's just take the stand and do it, and put it in statute, and if it's referred, fine. And there's others that say, yeah, let's let the people decide. So after session today, I'll know more about what's going to happen. But we've had a lot of discussion, a lot of really good discussion on that, and so we'll see what happens.
Senator Good, I was just curious on the SJR, what made you vote against that?
James, my current opinion is that I think the 50+1 threshold is fine, and I don't have a personal interest in changing it. If it makes its way to the ballot, I'll vote the same way at the ballot box that I did on the floor. This SJR one is the raising the vote threshold.
Anything else you want us to know? Anything you want us not to know?
Could be, we're definitely not gonna tell you that one. No, we could be burning some midnight oil to get some of these bills done. I mean, it's looking like it'll be the most I've seen since I've been in the House. Every year it seems to be going down a little bit. Well, we definitely threw that trend out the window this year, so.
I think you're rightly, on the Senate calendar day, it's all House bills pretty much, so you guys have been busy beavers over there. It's the first time I can remember this early in the session that most of the Senate calendar is House bills that have already made it through your chamber, through a committee in our chamber, and then down to our floor. So we've got a whole list of House things to address today. So first time I remember it that early in the session.
A question for Senator Cruz, your daughter. There is a bill.
That's correct. Thank you for the question.
Senate Bill 110 raises concerns about Planned Parenthood and whether they're complying with current statute for informed consent for those who would seek an abortion. Have you read that bill? Do you have any thoughts about writing in this statute concerned about?
I'm not a big fan in general of the government trying to get in the way of the doctor-patient relationship at any level. I think it's best left between the physician and the patient seeking treatment. I have not dug into the meat and potatoes of Senate Bill 110 at this point. I have great faith in our medical community, and I believe that anyone who is currently licensed and practicing in the state knows what the expectations are, that patients don't undergo any procedure, any treatment, or any test without being thoroughly informed. I think we're all very familiar with what the ethical and professional standards are, and I expect that we abide by them. I think there are methods already to address physicians that don't engage in the appropriate behavior, and if that's a concern, then I think the mechanisms that exist for addressing those issues should be utilized. I'm not sure we need to redouble our efforts in that arena.
Okay, have a good weekend. Thank you. Enjoy the long weekend. See you next.